Welcome to Main Street Marin, the show produced by the volunteers at the Community Media Center of Marin, celebrating the people and small businesses that help make Marin a very special place to live.
It was started in 1954 by Leonard Jared and Stephen Binion. And each one of these statements could take a long explanation. Steve Binion had been Eisenhower's chief communications officer in World War II. The two of them got out of the Army. Leonard Jared was the first guy to ever be on TV playing piano in the Army. He was in, the Army Hour was a weekly show from Tennessee somewhere, and they paid him, he was like a 17-year-old kid, they paid him to take lessons with all these famous people up in New York. They'd fly him up, and he would learn the first 2 pages of all these concertos, because it was like the opener to the Army Hour.
Okay.
And they had this, yeah. So that's those two guys, and that began in San Francisco. It was in a place called the city of Paris. It was a kind of a boutique shopping thing.
Okay.
And then they were 20 years on Polk there, and they had a big store. I never saw that. They moved to Marin in 1973, and I came here in 1976. Was as a kid, we didn't have, my dad was in the Air Force. And then we had, he was a teacher too, later, but we had no stereo equipment or anything. So all we had was this 54 Cadillac with a wonderful radio. And I would go out there and listen to the radio. And one night, in particular, I remember it was the orchestra just played, and then down from heaven came the sound of the piano, just descending. Really? And I thought, that's the most beautiful sound in the world. And so I look at that as a calling, you know, when I was 14 or so. And then I started studying with a guy who had played with dance bands back in the 20s and 30s. And he also had been a piano tuner. And he still tuned, and that's why we actually met him. But the funny thing is, he must have been born about 1900 or something. He quit tuning pianos full time because the radio. He said the radio was going to put the piano business out of business. And so I did have that epiphany, you might say. And then my dad told me if I learned to play, I'd be popular at parties.
Which was?
So that sounded attractive. I said, those are 2 pluses. And then I was a gymnast of sort, just, you know, fooling around. And I thought, well, yeah, like the hands, you know, that's a good exercise for the hands. So I started really going with it. And then we found this guy, Mr. Albrecht. He's the guy that stopped tuning in 1924 because the radio, he said, he was afraid it would put the piano out of business. And so I worked with him and developed a passion. And then he wasn't, later on, I'm skipping forward now a little bit, I continued to play with him and learn songs, mostly the old tunes that I still like, swing tunes and Cole Porter and things. And then he became not available to tune. And so I said, well, I'm going to just learn to tune pianos. And I was like 16, 17. And so that's a whole story there. I had an electric organ that had 12 circuit boards with a little screw on each one so you could make it flat or sharp. So I learned to set the temperament, which is, I wish I had that now to teach people because you could really hear it. And because setting the temperament is the first thing you do when you're tuning the piano, because you're getting your 12-tone series laid out so that the rest of the piano follows that. Think of a clock with 12 numbers.
So do you find the octave, and then you have to, I mean, each one is the same. It used to be before equal temper that they were more Pythagorean, but now.
Yeah, now that's a huge discussion, and I'm not a super scholar on all the different temperaments, and supposedly Bach tuned his own keyboards. But the point is, if you're going to sit down at a keyboard and play in any key, it has to be, you have to compromise, because a fifth, a fourth could be perfect, octaves are perfect, but you have to bend it into shape. So it's like a irrational number, you might think. To get it to turn out in a perfect circle, it's so two violins playing together, they can do that, and then they can adjust as they go. But you can't. The piano's already set. So, and that's a wonderful subject. I'm a very accomplished tuner. We had the whole group of Bay Area piano tuners in here at one point, and I got up and I said, I just want you all to know I'm the second best tuner in the Bay Area. And there was quiet, and somebody says, of course, well, who's the best? And I said, well, you all claim to be, but I'm going to take second. Yeah, there you go. So you got to laugh, and that was great, because they're, like a lot of professions, they're very cutthroat. Only to capture that wonderful sound.
So you were unhappy with the sound of your piano at home?
Yeah, well, I wanted to be able to have a perfectly in-tuned piano. Okay. And then it occurred to me very quickly that I would never get this great effect unless I became really experienced. So then I began tuning a few pianos. My first victim was my math teacher. And he put me on an old piano out in his barn, and $10, which was a lot of money. And I spent about 2 hours getting it a lot better than it was, and I was about to quit. And I said, this is good enough, I said to myself. And then I got tapped on the shoulder, and it was God. And he says, yeah, but I'm watching. So I put another half hour in there and did my very best. And that story is relevant, Zoo, because every time I tune, and every tuner has to be committed to this product. It's truthfully said that any piano is only as good as the last guy to tune it. Every note has 3 strings, and you've got to get those perfectly together, and then you've got to get those together. So it's a real skill. That'll get it good. In fact, we had somebody in here the other day with that to test my tuning, and they were going, "Wow, that's good," because you're hearing the difference between 800 beats a second movement of the string and 801. So your ear can't really hear that. You're hearing the Doppler, the wave of it. So it creates a wave, and so the final getting them together is to remove that. So, and it's just, it's an amazing, I'm always amazed too, working with the tuning hammer, just almost one finger, just nudging it a little bit. Oh, there it is. It's kind of fun. But you have to be committed to that perfection. Okay. And you can get a piano sounding good. And a lot of pianos you hear, they're like, okay. And then if you hear a really first-rate recording, that's a different thing. And I've recorded and done. We had the record plant here, which is like Abbey Roads West. Yeah. And so we tuned out there, and so I have a lot of career of concert tuning.
So you were the tuner. You say we, but you went to.
Yeah, I was. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And then I do have 2 sons I need to mention. They also tune, and they're excellent. When you tune by ear, it's difficult because it's like if you were, and I'm visually impaired a little bit, but if you are concentrating using your eyes, the ears, so it's a concentration, so you get very tired. So you have to develop the stamina to tune that way.
Are the eyes distracting?
No. It depends on who's in the room. But that bad joke. Yeah. Cut that out. I do not. And there's no such thing. They call it that, but it should be called pitch recognition. And it'd be like, I never thought of it this way. Nobody has perfect color. There's 50 shades of white when you go to the paint store. So, but you know what white looks like. So I do know people, one Russian, my favorite classical pianist, Helita Danova, and she's a good friend. She can not only recognize without any hesitation, and that's a person who can do that. Oh, that's an A. Oh, that's that's pitch recognition. She not only can do that, she sees color. Each pitch has a different color. And that seems to me that would be distracting, but whatever she does, she's awesome.
Okay.
And I didn't decide to do this professionally till I was about 25.
Okay.
And when I made that decision, that's what I discovered this company, Leonard Jarrett and Stephen Binion. And that's a wonderful story. And so I joked earlier, I know what I was trying to say, I was adopted.
Oh, yeah.
I was adopted. I'm joking, but they were.
Oh, you were adopted here.
Yeah, I mean, there were partners, and then I fit in.
Okay.
And so then eventually Steve passed away, and then so Leonard, he was a senior partner, and I became a junior partner.
And then he passed away or retired? Or?
He did too, yeah, about 30 years ago now. The section that we're in right here is 20 feet wide and 50 feet this way. That was the size of our old store.
Wow.
From 85 to 2005. It was across town here, right across from United Market on 3rd Street.
Oh, okay.
And then we had a big area in back where we stored pianos, but the showroom was just about this big. This is like a collection of really special pianos. The analogy would be Packard cars or Duesenberg cars or Rolls Royces. And this section is kind of more the specialty pianos like that.
Right. So the thing that thrilled me when I came in here was the variety. And you have some really, you have really strange, like those, and then you have the symmetrical ones, and you have Plütner, and for some reason, you don't have Fazioli. Have you ever had a Fazioli?
No, but he kept bugging me to take it on.
But
they cost, they're like the cost, well, they cost about as much as a house used to cost.
Yeah. So.
I mean, and I would have to wear a 3-piece suit, and I don't know. It just, there's always a piano company. It used to be Mason and Hamlin in the 1920s, 1930s, that are the very top.
Yeah.
Like there's the very best motorcycle.
Right.
There's the best this, that, and they market it that way.
Right.
And then maybe later, not so much, or somebody else comes along vying for that. Right now, it would be, Fazioli would be one of them, Steingraber. We have gotten away from the high-end, brand-new pianos because we have a full rebuild shop in back, and pianos, if they're in a good climate, which Marin County has a wonderful climate, where the humidity is stable, and a piano can live here 100 years and still be really, really nice. So we've gone into more of an eclectic.
So how do you?
A miracle. This is a miracle business. It's a miracle when customers come in, and I look at it as a real miracle. But so pianos show up. People call, or it's an estate. What's happening now, we're getting, like this Bluthner that you pointed to, we had that when Leonard was still alive in the 1980s, and we restored it. Originally, it's from 1913. So this originally was solid gold leaf. The entire piano was gold. And it had been in a German officers club in World War I, and they had used it to pin up notices and stuff. So it had pinholes, and it was. This has a huge history to it. But this has come back to us, and so some of these are repeat.
Oh, somebody bought it and then returned it.
Yeah, well,
You bought it back.
Yeah.
Why? That's a strange.
This would take quite a while to tell the story of this, but it belonged to a wonderful lady, Phyllis Heron, who it's Heron and Heron in the city. They have a big law firm, and she walked in one day, right when we were doing the final work on this. Literally, I was underneath this piano tightening a screw, and she came through the front door. Wonderful personality, older lady, and she started talking to Leonard, and the two of them were just like instantly old friends. And she bought this, and then we moved it upstairs to her penthouse on Pacific Heights. And famous people played this. She also bought another German piano from us, a Grotrian, that she had. She had two pianos, and then she would host these fabulous dinners, and the performers would be world famous musicians that were going to play at Davies, and they would do their warm up in her house and have a fine dinner and look out over the bay. One night at one of her events like that, this was her piano upstairs that she had with her mirror collection. But one night we had the owner and the heir of Grotrian, Knut Grotrian, was there, and he was enjoying Garrick Olson playing, and he said, "This may be the nicest night of my life."
Wow.
Because he was looking out at San Francisco Bay, and so I'll always remember that comment. So each of these pianos, a lot of the point there is that this piano is an example of something that's come back to us. She had it, and then now we have it, and we're selling it for her estate. Well, one of the great places, and it is the museum, the historical museum up in Petaluma, and it's the old Carnegie Library building.
Okay.
So we have a Henry F. Miller there that's 8.5 feet. It's concert grand. And we restored it, and then it got placed there as a venue for really great recitals. Has one of the best deep basses that I've ever heard.
Yeah.
At that time, there was over 1,000. I've heard as many as 1,400 different piano manufacturers in the United States.
Yeah.
Some of them very small, but there was lots of pianos being made and by different people.
Yeah. So you came here when you were 25.
Yeah.
And you started as a tuner and a fixer, a
Yes.
repair guy.
Yes.
So how did you learn the repair stuff?
Well, through the senior partner, Leonard Jared.
Okay, so he...
Books. There's a national organization called the Piano Technicians Guild, and they are dedicated to helping people come along.
Yeah.
And so I was a member of that.
Yeah.
Still am. So, but there's always something new to learn. Pianos are fascinating, and because there were so many different people making them, they solved just a simple problem like how does this come apart? How do you get the fall board on and off?
Yeah.
Steinway has their way of doing it. Mason Hamlin has a different way of doing it, and you have to figure different things out. Oh boy. Well, in physics, it's how long the hammer is in contact with the string. I say physics for the sake of Zoo, because he's a physics guy. But so the hammer comes up, hits the string, and then if it's a little softer, it goes further, and it kind of bends a little bit and pushes the string, giving a more fundamental tone, more like the difference between a French horn and a cornet. Same note, but they sound very different. So if you hear a piano that's very twangy or nasally or not so good, it needs voicing. And again, that's a big discussion. But there's tuning and there's voicing, and you have to do both. that. And I like the word personality. It reminds me of Leonard Jared, the J of JB Company. He was asked, do pianos have a soul? And he says, no, I don't think so, but they have a personality. A grand piano, you're lifting the hammer up to the string. And a upright piano, it's resting here and it comes forward.
Right.
So very different mechanism. You're pushing the key about 3/8 of an inch, which seems like not a lot, and then the hammer's moving like 1 7/8 of an inch, depending on the piano. So there's this huge acceleration.
Yeah.
We have a 1904 upright over there that it's a Weber from New York, and it was in one of the Carnegie Hall warm-up rooms. Right. So it could have been played by Gershwin or So that's a fascinating thing. A lot of times we don't know the history of a piano. We wish we did. Yeah. And I see pianos I've had. One of my favorite signatures on the inside of one of the pianos we had was Oscar Hammerstein, and it was like a freight train. You know, it was like this. It tapered off. So we have some that are signed. There are some pianos that are that we know the history of. Others that we just heard. Shape, but it's probably okay. So this is a beautiful sounding piano. It is from the early 1920s. They say the most successful model that Steinway ever built was this. In 1991, I was called to go tune a piano out in a ranch in Napa. And the guy told me it's a 9-foot Mason and Hamlin. And I've always been a huge fan of Mason and Hamlin pianos. And so I went out there and tuned it, and he told me the story. He had just bought it from a radio station in Sacramento that had had it for 60 years, since 1929, 1930. I tuned it and I started to just marvel at it. And he didn't play a piano much. He just bought it because it was for sale and got it. And I said, look, if you ever want to sell this piano, call me. And then 10 years later, the phone rang and it was him. He said, you still want to buy that piano? And I said, yeah. And I made him an offer. And we just did the deal. I didn't even go see it or anything. It came in to our old shop, the shop before this, came in. It was still like I'd tuned it last week. And then we had a friend, Ron Antonoli, who was an architect builder here in Marin. He built a lot of buildings, and he had a collection of pianos, and he was a piano guy. Not so much that he played, but he had a big home. We called it Hearst Castle up north on a hill in Nevada. And he said, Glenn, how much do you want for this piano? And I said, it's not for sale, because I was a Mason and Hamlin dealer, and they didn't make a 9-foot yet. This is a 9-foot Mason and Hamlin. And I said, it's not for sale. About 2 hours later, he called, and he said, how much do you really want for it? So I did sell it to him. And then he said, regardless of the cost, I just want it totally restored. So we went special casters. These casters will elevate the piano or lower it. Oh, wow. This is the heaviest piano ever produced, for over 1,400 pounds. Well, a Steinway, same length, is about 980 something, which is this tension resonator that keeps the rim from ever moving. Wow. So it's the most over-engineered piano So again, I'll just play a little something. This was last. Thank you. I get lost in the sound. I forget
It's
what
got a
am I.
very classy
Oh,
sound.
jeez. It's
Doesn't
just
it? It's really.
you can come back half hour later and that'll still be going.
Yeah.
And I last tuned this out. It's a whole story, but it was about over 3 years ago, out in Stinson Beach, and I haven't touched it.
Really?
It's a lot of work to tune a piano, so I like them when they stay.
Yeah, yeah.
The Stetson Beach is a little moister.
I know. This thing is just, it's a rock.
So you say they don't.
I just want to say that this is a place that is open to Marin County people that live here. Many people do know about us because we've done student recitals on our stage over on the other side of the room. And over the years, a lot of families, I love to see families with small children, and to see the enthusiasm of small children getting up, overcoming their fear, and actually performing, some better than others. But it's something they'll remember their whole life. I remember one day we had over 100 kids in a row that came that one day, and I sat the whole time and looked at every single child. I was just enthralled with it. It's not like that every time, but I remember that one day. So this place is a great discovery for people who want to know of a special place in Marin County. But you can learn so much about pianos. And I know that there's an expedient approach to wanting a keyboard. You get electric keyboard, but it's just not the same. A real piano can be really good if it's properly tuned, voiced, regulated. It just becomes a much better experience to play than an electric keyboard.
Yeah.
I would like to write a book sometime
Yeah.
about just the events, because it's been very interesting, the life that I have.